All right. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to start out by introducing myself a bit more and where I'm coming from
Yes,
on this
please.
because like I'm a I'm a straight guy, but my family and many of my friends are from the 2SLGB QIA community. And so it's something I'm passionate about, especially my son is trans. And so with the attacks on the drag community seem to really focus in a lot on trans, especially. Um, at time, or well, overall. So yeah, it's something that is very close to me, through family and friends. And
It is a hard time for our families.
yeah.
Um, I talk to a lot of people, as you can imagine, and a
Mhm.
lot of them are parents that are coming out. It's like our younger generation, their parents are now paying attention in ways that they might not have before because it didn't affect them. And as their children have grown, they're finding it does affect them. And they're appalled in ways that they just weren't before.
Mhm.
And if that's what it took, that's what it took. We've been waiting a long time for the straight community to, the allies to step forward a bit more. Um, and it seems like now is a big time. And I'm very grateful for all of our allies because they've been significantly helpful in drag story time. It's like they've used it as a mantle. And they show up with their kids and their grandkids and their mom and their dad and their grandparents, and it's a miracle.
Yeah.
Sadly, it took that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted to start off, like, get some background on well, we'll start off with just it seems to me that things maybe even 5 years ago, when I'd be writing articles for small town papers, it looked like there was a lot more acceptance going on. And then in the last few years, especially, it seemed to pick up during the pandemic. Um, there's been a lot of blowback, and a lot of people who, like, the over the last maybe 2 years, it seems it it's like things have been backsliding a little bit in acceptance. Have you
Well,
seen
I think
that?
I think I think the boys in the basements with their ideologies and their fuck Trudeau and the convoy and anti-vaxxers have had a lot of time on their hands during COVID, and
Mhm.
so they've collected in their mother's basement, and they're really starting their own movement. And some of them are far more intelligent than others, but the fact is that they're all being super aggressive with us. And
Okay.
that's how I see that. And if I could capsulize that a little bit, how they've had a lot of time on their hands, and so they've discovered this. And also, I think it's also a very pointed attack on drag storytime
Mhm.
events. And I have more to say about that because that's the one that I'm particularly involved with.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to move into. Like, I'd like to give you a chance to talk about. If I'm looking over here, it's just I've got notes
Please
scrawled
do,
over
please
here. And
do, and I'll do the
um
same.
yeah, so first, I'd like to get you to talk about how, like, the background on Drag Storytime Guardians and how you ended up taking on that role as a protector, kind of.
Okay, so my name's Sista Patricia. It is my motorcycle name, in fact. That's what I go by. And I had at the time belonged to a pretty large women's motorcycle group. And um, I live in Strathroy, Ontario. Of course, um, which is pretty close to Park Hill, which is a little town in the middle of nowhere with nothing going on. And I had been hearing that there were incidents at some of the story time at libraries, and I wanted to go to see what was going on because I felt that it was important as a queer, an elder queer in my own community to go and check that out. So I collected a few friends, and we went off on that day in May. And it was not a very nice day, I will add. But when we got there, there was protesters with a bullhorn and a lot of noise and screaming and yelling. And we immediately got into, the event, and we got in front and we linked arms to provide a wall between us, the protesters, and the people who were trying to get into the event. And it was an onslaught from the protesters. They just battered us for about an hour and a half, up to 2 hours, with their derogatory remarks, swearing at us, the bullhorn right in my face for a really long time. Just enraged that we were there and that drag story time was allowed to even happen. And they were determined that it shouldn't. And as I got to know that crowd a little bit, it was represented by several different groups. There were a couple of Proud Boys there that we recognized, one across the street, mostly videotaping, and one who was holding signage off to the right, and a religious group, and then some just out and out fanatical, crazy people who could barely grunt a sentence. So we were there for a while when we realized that they were now, instead of waiting at the front door, when they saw a family coming, they would go in that direction and start screaming at them and harassing them as they were coming to the event. So we went over and we started escorting them with the help of the volunteers and the staff from the library, and trying to block the children from raging that was going on. So
Can I pause there and just get a picture of this? These are families going to the event? Are these people screaming at like the children too? And
they're screaming in general. I don't know that they were discerning between the parent or their child, because when you're raging like that, how do you even tell the difference?
Yeah.
They screamed at one parent, "You're a fucking pedophile," in front of his two children. They made a racist remark about one young mixed race girl with her dad. Those are just two examples of things that people were doing in front of children. And so we just became guardians at that point, really, at that very moment. We were guarding them to get into the library safely, and to ensure that, to the best of our ability, the children did not experience the hatred. So we placed ourselves between them and just, laughed and, clapped for them and try to just have it be a joyful moment, as opposed to the hate that was going on right beside us. And once they were all in, we stayed because the protesters didn't leave, so it continued. There was a large religious group who set up a prayer group directly to the right of the door. So So that was interesting as well. You know, on one hand, we're getting all these haters screaming profanities, and on the other side, they're praying for our souls.
Okay.
And when I
Interesting.
say
That's
our, I'm talking about everybody that was there.
okay.
You
Interesting.
know,
But it, they were praying for everybody, but they were on the ideological side of the
correct.
protester.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. And I could hear their prayers. They were just really hoping that, praying that, the parents could find the wisdom to, realize that this was, and not their words, but evil, what was going on here. And it was detrimental to the children. And they were praying for their souls.
Okay. And so since then you've been doing this all throughout southwestern Ontario. And
Correct.
the protesters that you see, is it the same people showing up?
In
Um
some cases, yes. In many
okay.
cases, there's some repeat offenders.
Okay.
So we recognize them, and the groups have become bigger and more vicious, and we've become bigger as well. So we are better equipped, uh, than the first day when we really didn't know what we were walking into. So people heard about what had happened, and they started sending me messenger, all sorts of ways that they were finding me and asking me to come to Storytime and with my group of people, to which I could never say no. How could I? After witnessing what they were willing to do in front of children, it didn't take long for me to gather a bunch of people who were motivated to go and stand guard for children and the drag queens.
Okay. And you said that the crowds have been getting more vicious, but on the Guardian side of this, I've been noticing, I haven't been able to make it out to one yet, but I've been hoping to. My life's just been crazy. But so I've noticed how you have everything planned out. It's a very well, you seem to be at the helm of a very well-oiled machine when it comes to how you set things up and prepare and get people into action now, from what I've been seeing online.
Well, I'm an organizer, from way back when. I was brought up in the Ottawa Valley, where our seat of parliament is. And I came out at 27 and, immediately joined the march for feminist rights, for reproductive rights, for every type of right, and for our rights as queers to have some of the basic things that people don't think about anymore. Our right to safe housing, because back then I could lose my housing if my landlord simply found out that I was a lesbian. I could be evicted. I could lose my job if my boss found out that I was a lesbian. I could lose uh, the rights to my children if my ex-husband found out that I was a lesbian. He could have full custody of the children legally. So many things that we did not have. Basic human rights were taken away from us because of our sexuality. So that's where I spent a lot of my time, you know, marching on Parliament Hill for our rights for those things, and it just continued through my life. I'm 70 years old now, and I really had hoped I'd stop marching by now, but apparently the work continues, and it's taking different faces, same flavor but different faces. Um, so to say that we are organized, we have a plan in place, we execute it, it's because we've been doing it for so long. And I have some really excellent people working with me who, really support us and help us get through so that when we show up, as you can see the flags behind me, that we have flags, and our goal is to use those to block any visualization that the protesters would have of the children. We don't want the kids to see them. We don't want them to see the kids. And we have other tactics as well that we use to keep them out of events. Some of those events are easier for them to get into than others. So we focus on what are the entrance areas that we need to cover to make sure that they're not getting in and disrupting and spreading their hate speech all over the place. So that's kind of our basic goal, is to offer support to the libraries or wherever they're having story time, so that we can do that. As our main goal is to provide support to the children to make sure that they're safe and they only see unicorns and butterflies. They're not seeing the haters. And then we also support the drag queens, because it's really incredibly hard on them as well, to be hated so much for who they are, and they're afraid they come to the building a long time before the event, and they don't leave until they are sure that all the protesters are gone. And it's gotten so bad now that the police are actually escorting them into the building and out at times, because it's just like a rabid dog out there. And, any sight of a drag queen tends to send them into a rabid reaction.
That's when I hear that, because a lot of the protesters say things like they're doing it for family values or things like that. But what they bring with them, that anger and that hatred, seems like the
Seems very
complete opposite.
contrary to family values. Exactly. For us, we say that every day. It's like they come in here talking, they criticize that we're not taking care of our children, and that we're not taking care of family, and that we're hateful, and we're help me here. Indoctrinating. Yes, thank you so much. The children, and what we're doing is just living a family life like we always wanted.
Yeah.
Really, that's what we're doing. When I talk to the families, it's like, oh, hi, how are you? How are the kids? Is everything okay in school? Yeah, Joe, so-and-so is learning to ride his bike. And, we're just regular people going to the library to hear story time. And it's become this monster of inaccurate misinformation spread to try and stop us from existing. And you might say, oh my God, that's weird to say, stop you existing from story time. But it's no accident that they are very aggressively moving through not just Southern Ontario, but if you look at Peterborough and Ottawa, all across Ontario. So that has to make you pause and think, what's going on in Ontario? That is, because it can't just be an accident. And, I believe, and many believe, that some of this has come from their failures in the United States. And, they thought, well, you know what, we should go somewhere, and I'm oversimplifying, go somewhere like Southern Ontario, and they're very conservative towns. And we should, tell them that their children are being sexualized at Drag Story, because what is easier to sell to crazy people than the sexualization of children with drag queens? It's almost like it was made for it, sadly. So they're selling that to small town Ontario, and a lot of small town Ontario is listening to that and saying, you're right, it's awful, how awful. And so all of the crazies come out, and they just further their agenda of hatred towards the queer community. And it's not going to stop there at all, but we're trying to stop them, and we've been very effective in Southern Ontario. We're going to stop them by whatever means it takes to stop them. And I'll use as an example, if I may, bear with me for a moment.
Okay.
in Park Hill, there was one particular person, a Proud Boy, who was there, and he yelled that profanity at "You're a fucking pedophile" to a gentleman. So he filed a report with the police for hate speech. The police at the time felt that they really couldn't exercise an arrest warrant there, but they kept it on file. The same gentleman shows up in other towns. I think it was Ingersoll. Well, he's been at a few, but let's just say Ingersoll, where he went around carrying a placard that said "Kill all pedos." And he also, continued to be very, very aggressive with us. And we're like, how is he getting away with all of this? How is he getting away with standing there with a placard and being so incredibly hateful, and not just hateful, but spreading hate speech about us? And in his insanity, because my experience with bullies is this: if you keep pushing them a little bit, eventually they're going to do something stupid because they feel, that they have all the power and we can't hurt them. So they eventually do something stupid. And he did. He opted to drive from London, Ontario to Windsor, Ontario, and buy some flowers somewhere. And he walked right into a hospital, into a palliative care unit, and he directly went into the room of a palliative father of one of our group and left the flowers and took a selfie of himself with that woman's father and sent that out.
Yeah, I saw that.
I want you to just for a minute feel that, what that must have been like to receive that text, and what that's like to imagine what level of depravity he has to imagine something like that and then to take that action. The good news is, by taking that action, he fell right into the big trap of doing something particularly stupid that the Windsor police acted on. He was arrested, and today was his first court date. So, we're following that closely because he's a very dangerous man, and there are a lot of really dangerous people who don't have a line. We all have a line that, oh, I wouldn't cross that, I wouldn't do that, I would never do that. He has no line. So those are the kinds of people we're dealing with on a day-to-day, but it's also organized, and they get a lot of support from some extremely crazy people. And I call them crazy, but really they're haters. They just can't stand the very thought that we live and that we have rights now. That's a simple synopsis of it. They really can't, and they're going to do whatever it takes to remove our rights and crush us to the ground. And we're not doing it. Not today, not on my watch.
Yeah. And yeah, it's like they'd like to see everyone put back in the closet, and
it's about, in some ways, it's about change. They want, and you hear them say it all the time, why can't things be the way they used to be? Why can't things be the way they used to be? Nothing is ever the way it used to be. We have always evolved as a humanity, so their parents may have said the same thing, and their parents may have said the same thing, but the fact is we do change. Women have rights to vote. We have a right to get a credit card without our husband signing for it. There are all kinds of things that we have rights for now, and we're going to continue. And the world changes. Women are, in careers that, that are really distressful for some men, and they're, on top of the, corporate business. We're doctors, we're lawyers, and so are the queer community members, and it just makes them nuts.
What do you think it is right now that is making the haters feel emboldened and able to really?
I could just say the word Trump 100 times.
Okay. Yeah.
He was instrumental in saying the things that they'd been thinking and giving them room to say it out loud and applauding them for taking direct action in relationship to it. I really put a lot on that period of time. Not to say that the haters didn't exist before, but that just elevated everything to open season on anything that wasn't what they considered to be right.
Okay.
So, do you agree?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you're 100, sadly, you're 100% right on that. And
Yeah. And
I,
it felt infiltrated over to us.
mhm,
And they've all taken it as, fuck
yeah, and
Trudeau. Look at fuck Trudeau. It's like, oh my God, they just want what exactly? I should ask them that one day. What is it you actually want?
yeah,
I have a pretty good idea what their answer would be is just them in control. They hate
mhm,
the thought that they're losing control. Their wives are leaving them. We're providing safety for children. We can, we have the ability to act legally in situations where, such as the gentleman from Windsor, he felt that he had the right to do whatever he wanted. But we don't. We have no rights. We should have no rights. And so as we use the systems to our advantage, it enrages them even further.
okay. Yeah, yeah, I think you're um right on that, and it's sad.
I watch videos, not much, but I do go on to what we all call the dark web, because it's kind of important to see what they're saying about you and who they are.
Yeah,
And they do love to post videos. And I'll tell you, almost to a T, it's some guy who's drunk and stoned in his mother's basement or maybe out in the garage who has set up his man cave and just rants and rages at the world and not really articulate. And you'd be surprised how close they are to us. I'm not sure where you live,
I
but
live in Listowel, Ontario, and
okay, they have their little clubhouses,
yeah,
and we know where a lot of them are. So when we're in those areas, we know when to expect a larger presence of protesters and the level of hatred that they are likely to bring with them. So they're gathering, they're collecting, they're talking to each other. They think they have a plan, um, and we're interfering with their plan in terms of drag story time.
so if people are listening to this and they agree with you and they want to um help out or get in touch or support, what are some ways that they can get in touch and become part of the
First of all, I
movement?
want to say if you have a child or anyone in your family who is wanting or seems to be wanting to talk about being queer, listen to them. Recognize them for who they are as your family, someone you love. And that was my experience. When I came out, it wasn't that easy, and it caused some problems for me and my family. And I didn't feel loved. I felt queer, literally. And what I would have given to have had someone to sit down and talk to me and say, it's okay, you're going to be all right. and we're going to work through this change with you because you're our child and you're our brother, whatever the relationship is. And show support in a very personal way, and it will mean the world to them. I'm a big proponent of the power of one. If you, as one person, can step forward and care for one other person, then you got two. And then you're going to double that. And, it just goes on and on and on like that. And the power to be able to change within your family should not be ignored. Because when I came out, I was not supported. But recently at London Pride, where we were receiving an award for our community work, I looked out into the crowd and there was one of my elders in my family, a nephew and his wife, their adult daughter and her husband, and their 3-year-old child who loves drag queens. And I can't tell you what that moment meant to me. I don't have the words to explain to you what that meant to me to have him walk through a pride parade, a pride event, with the love that he had for me. And to show that love by showing up at something that meant very much to me. So I want people to know that that makes a huge difference. And the work we do is so that others can experience the love of their family. That the children who are growing up, whether they grow up queer or not, trans or not, whatever, that they experience pure love, not based on what you are or what you are not. Let them be who they are. Our kids are okay. When I say our kids, I'm talking about your kids too. Like, really, we're okay. What makes us not okay is hatred that gets jammed at us all the time, and it changes you mentally, and you're constantly on guard. We want to change that. We want kids today to feel safe to come out, safe to talk to their parents and say, you know what, I'm just not sure what I am. And you can sit down and have a conversation, and maybe you could both learn. What a gift that is to your family to learn about each other. If someone wants to reach out to Drag Storytime Guardians, we have an email address. It's dragstorytime@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out, and I will directly look at that and consider what it is. And if people want to join our group, which we have a pretty large group now, we vet people to make sure that they're in line. And we'd love to have people join up. And in that group, we've got everybody. We've got your grandparents, you got your kids, we got your brothers and sisters and uncles, your neighbor next door who's, saw you grow up and knew you didn't have support and they felt bad that happened, but now they're not going to stand for it. And they're coming over and they're holding the flag, and they're proud to do so. So find us at Drag Storytime.
Okay. That sounds like I was almost tearing up while you were, or I probably did a little bit when you were saying some of that, because I mean, it is so meaningful the way we show acceptance and we show love to each other, and it's so important. Yeah.
It's everything, especially in the world as we see it now. When we talk about how hateful it is, the only thing that we can fight that with is love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah, we've
lost ourselves through COVID. We didn't, in my opinion, we could have handled it a whole lot better. It was such an opportunity for us to do well as a people, as humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, we fucked that up.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So now we're paying the prices of not doing well in something that we could have done well. Instead of reaching out to your neighbor and saying, hey, can I go get some groceries for you? Or would you like some of what I have? Or if you need to go to the doctor, I'll take you. Or, if you just need someone to talk to, we can talk on the phone. Some of that happened, but a lot of it didn't happen.
Mhm.
Hatred grew right out of that, where we were just fearful of each other. You'd see somebody you knew in the grocery store, and if they didn't have a mask on, all kinds of hell would break loose. So we could have done better. We didn't, in my opinion, but we're doing better here. We're going to
Excellent.
love ourselves through this and
Okay.
each other.
Any other, you've put a lot of great messages in what you've said. Um, is there anything that you really want to get in here that you feel you didn't touch on? That's
I'm sure there is a lot, that I didn't touch on because there's so much. Um, I would caution everyone that uh, there's a lot of fascism going on. The Nazis are out there. They're trying to get a foothold. Well, they have a foothold. Look at what happened in Mississauga today.
mm,
At their drag story time, there's about 20 protesters, and they were awful. Apparently, just awful. So the less we have hatred, the more love can get in. And that's my message, really. It couldn't be any simpler, because
mhm.
I spend a lot of time talking to people, as I said, and that really helps when people have someone to talk to.
Okay. Well, I
Vote,
mean,
vote,
yes.
really important. And I'm going to say this. Yes, I will say there's one more thing. School trustees. So, as you know, it's a big issue at schools to raise the flag, um, and it shouldn't be, because the kids want it, but the adults are fighting about it. And we're finding that school trustees, a lot of the ultra right wing, are placing themselves in places to get into power in the school trustee system, and they're getting control and demanding that the flag not be flown, that children not be allowed to have pronouns, that people not be allowed to have pronouns, that a lot of the support systems within the schools are removed. So that's someplace that's really important when it comes to voting as a citizen, to actually make sure that your vote counts, that we're getting the right people in politics, that we're not the really right people aren't being forced out by the ultra right wing extremists who are right there. And I look at Norwich, Ontario,
Mhm.
as a shining example of hate taking over a town. It was always there, but they called it something else. But now they're on fire with their hatred because we just want our rights. I'm sorry, I'm rambling again.
That's fine. You're rambling with messages that I find very positive and good to hear people putting into words and getting out there. So I don't mind at all.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. So I think I've got everything I need to work with, and I thank you for taking the time to talk to me about this. And
It's my pleasure. I look forward to hearing your podcast. Please keep in touch with me, Colin.
I
I'd
will. I
appreciate
will.
that a lot.
All
And
right.
good luck to you in your future, and good luck with your son.
All right. Thank you.
And take good care of him. He's precious, not because
Yeah.
he's queer, just because he's precious.
Yes, yes, he is. He's a
Okay,
wonderful
thank you.
guy. All right. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.